All right. Hello, everybody. We're live for our fourth Send Protocol live session. My name is Sarah Kate Hart. I'm Communications Director with Send. It's been a really big week for us. We've had remittances live within WeSend, our MVP, and we reached 10,000 US dollars in transaction volume for our beta, which has been a really, really exciting milestone to hit in just a couple weeks of operation so far. We're joined today, as always, by Francisco Cordova, Send co-founder and chief visionary. Francisco right now is in London. He'll be there this week, and he'll be speaking at 2 meetups this week. So the first is on Tuesday at 7 p.m. local time. He'll be talking about usability and adoption of blockchain. For those of you who are in the area, more than welcome to join. We'd love to be able to meet you in person and see you there. So Tuesday, 7 p.m. I'll let him jump in. There's another one later in the week. I don't have the details here in front of me, but I'm sure Francisco does. And most importantly, our guest today is Nasrat Khalid, and Nasrat is Chief Strategist at Awal Development. It's a US-based company that believes in putting technology first to tackle some of the world's most challenging development problems. He right now is joining us from Kabul, and we're really, really excited to have him with us. Nasrat has a background in information systems. He has a master's degree in business, and his work has been recognized by the G20, the World Bank, ICANN, UNIGF, and the Afghan government. And he's been doing a lot of work with the Afghan government, kind of advocating for technological solutions to development problems locally. So we're thrilled to have him with us. And I don't know if Francisco, you want to jump in with any follow-up before we dive in with kind of our central question here.
Yeah, we're excited to be in London, especially in the first session of the Tuesday. We're going to be with 4 companies. Each one of them have a different approach in terms of how we are using blockchain. What we're going to talk about with the people is how we're using WeSend to change the remittances industry. And that's the reason, because we want to see real value, real utility. I have seen a lot of people complaining on the internet about that a lot of blockchain companies don't have a direct connection with people. Well, in that session, you can be. It's a free session. You have to register. The second session is going to be on Thursday, also 7 p.m. And we're going to talk about GDPR. For ones that don't know about it, the European Union has issued a new policy in terms of how the data of European citizens should be managed. So when you're a tech company and you're handling data from European Union citizens, you have to handle it a proper way. Let me give you one example. If you mishandle the information and you get a hack and you don't report to people and that keeps happening, the European Union can give you a fine of up to 30 million euros. Imagine that. So maybe you have received thousands of emails telling you, we're changing our policy to be in GDPR compliance. And that's because companies all around the world, including the big ones, Twitter, Google, Facebook, know the importance of the GDPR. What we're going to talk about Thursday is how we WeSend as a decentralized system, how we design the system to be also in full compliance with GDPR. And we also would like to have you there. So this is what we're going to do in London. We're going to meet also with the diaspora of Nigeria. So Nigerians, diasporas all around the world are going to meet in one place, and we're going to talk to them. Why? Because we also want to enter to Nigeria. And I'm very excited to talk to Nasrat today about how we can really tackle these issues of really transforming a country and bootstrapping it. So Sarah, please. You're on mute, I believe. Yeah.
We go on mute to avoid an echo, and then I end up talking to myself over here. So the central question, Nasrat, that we want to kind of focus on today is how can blockchain be used as a development solution? And we're going to talk specifically about the context in Kabul, in Afghanistan. So why is the Afghanistan market ripe for trying to implement blockchain solutions to development problems? And if you can give some context as to, what are some of the challenges that the country is facing right now, and what are some of the most compelling potential use cases for blockchain locally?
Hi, thank you very much. Good to have you guys, and thank you for inviting me to this talk. Good to see you again, Francisco. The first time we met in Berlin. It's been a long way, quite a few years. So in regards to blockchain, a pretty new subject to Afghanistan especially. I mean, looking at technologies mainly, you would usually be thinking the best and new technologies, the AI, the blockchains, and all of this, and you think of the Silicon Valley and all of that. And this is what is really interesting about blockchains is too that according to me, I think the use case scenario for blockchains is much more in countries like Afghanistan and other developing countries than the places where they have some kind of formal financial systems. So just to sort of get a little bit of context there, and I'm just going to focus on Afghanistan, but this is very much relevant to other countries as well. Is, for instance, I was just looking into some reports from the World Bank, and the one from 2017 stated that 10% of the population in Afghanistan, 0.96% of the population in Afghanistan has access to finance, and that in banks and mobile transfers and all the other kinds of financial instruments over there. At the same time, I compared that with the amount of branches that are available, so people can go and do banking. This is 462 branches throughout the country. And this includes public institutions that are run by the government. At the same time, if we see the stats for internet, 79% of the developing economies have access to the internet. So that's more of your India and Pakistan and Bangladesh and all of that. If we look at South Asia, in Afghanistan alone, according to the stats, we've got 20 million mobile subscribers. Being an IT person who's been here for quite a long time, I would challenge those numbers, not 20 million, but even if it comes less than that, you can easily have more than 50% of the population covered under some kind of mobile services, which opens the door to blockchain-based transactions. So you're looking at 10% of the people having access to all kinds of financial instruments, and then you're looking at the people having access to the internet, and then the blockchain comes into play, and you can basically see that if the country was to move on to blockchain-based technologies, the adoption could be very quick, and the reach could be very quick to all these people throughout the country. So yes, that's kind of giving you a context of how blockchains can be revolutionary in a place like Afghanistan.
Nasrat, I remember when we met in Berlin. Can you mute your microphone for a second? Yeah. The funny thing about technology is that we always use technology, and then still we have some issues with technology, And when you're doing a presentation, when you're doing a live session, there's always something, even if you have the ultimate smartphones, cameras, or laptops. So when we talk about Afghanistan and such a complex country, the rural area is impressive, and internet is not everywhere. So how do you believe can really this type of technologies that are based on internet can really change things based that they have tried in different ways, but they have not been able to do it? What it needs to change to happen?
Well, I think technology is only useful if you use it in a systematic way. I don't think blockchains is going to work if it's not applied correctly. The idea of the idea is also that banking through the normal banks will work in Afghanistan, But the question is, what would be the pros and cons of going both ways? If you could, and you have, a lot of money, I would say go and make banks. But you can see there is a replacement to that, which is much more cheaper. It is much more advanced, and it's much more trustworthy than the previous systems that are in place. The blockchain is as transparent as it can get, and the system is not prone to a single point of failure, which makes the chances of blockchain succeeding in Afghanistan much more than the other previous systems that are in place, i.e. the banking, the mobile money, and all of that, or the local hawala systems that we have in Afghanistan.
And
yeah.
No, go ahead.
Nasrat, could you just mute the microphone when the other talks, because we have that echo? Sorry, talking about technology. Sarah, please.
So I was going to ask as a follow-up, I know that you have been working directly with the government to try to kind of advocate for implementing new blockchain-based solutions. What do you view as some of the opportunities there, and what have been some of the challenges? I think, in the industry in general, there is somewhat of a disconnect between government and tech. So what are you doing to try to kind of meet those two areas and implement solutions that are involving and the government and have the support of the government?
I think the government is just part of the puzzle here. The main key players are going to be the people who are going to choose what they want to use for their transactions. What is happening right now, and as we go out, many different technologies that are in place right now, when it comes to countries like Afghanistan, the reason not many technologies have worked is because we have never gotten to a point where we have identified the technology and have matched it with the local realities that we have here. Most of the technologies that have been implemented in places like Afghanistan, I believe, have sort of they're like parachuted ideas that came out of somewhere else with nobody who had local understanding of how they are going to implement these. The idea of blockchain, though, is very interesting because we are now getting local professionals involved into this who knows the local reality and using this technology, which could be bent to and customized to our needs. We may be able to get a breakthrough on to start with financial in the financial area, but the use of blockchains, I wouldn't say, is just based on financial transactions. It could go on to many different levels. So to compare between what was implemented and what is being implemented, if we were to use blockchains and we were to build a community, there's a lot that has to get into that before we get into launching our own products or working with other people like Send to come to Afghanistan and implement these solutions. So I think the idea that blockchain is one of the most modern technologies is not intimidating us, being Afghan people. We're not intimidated because it's not too complex. I know building a solution to start with could take a lot of effort, but to a normal end user, this is not going to be much more complex than using Facebook. On Facebook, we've had I think the latest stats I checked was at least 1 million people in Afghanistan only, which is much more than the access to the banks that we have. So the use of a single mobile app is much more easier than any of these the local financial instruments that we have. And building that for a group of people is not very hard. We could say that the newest technologies that are being built, including the IoT, the machine learning, and the AI, and I don't know, robotics and all of that, bringing them to Afghanistan might be very hard because there's some amount of infrastructure that has to go in place before you can go and implement them. But here's the thing with blockchains, you need internet, and I've been looking into different cases, and I was talking to Francisco about it, is to even develop a solution where we can do SMS-based blockchains, banking, or financial transactions. So you're looking at 90% of the country that is covered by some kind of signal could start using this technology to start doing financial transactions, I don't know, inventory management, land management, and the hundreds of other case scenarios where we have already tested blockchains. So it's very exciting. At the same time, it is not very hard. As of right now, we're just focusing on a local community. As we build this local community with the tools that we have, I believe we will be ready to jump in and sort of go from level 1 to level 5 directly, not going through the traditional route of taking steps and getting onto that point where we get to the most modern financial instrument by using blockchain.
There are two elements that just get into my mind. The first one is that based on your experience working with the World Bank, and second, saying that is easy when you have the local knowledge, when you have the technology, and when you start to build up the process. If it's so easy, why the other projects of mobile money have failed? Can you share some of the lessons?
Well, I think mobile money I was involved in the project that initially started mobile money in Afghanistan. I think mobile money may be the second thing to talk about. The first thing to talk about it, why do banks fail in Afghanistan? The biggest problem is transparency, and to be able to hold them accountable. And the second one is the infrastructure, where you require a lot of investment to be able to open these branches. That, I think, the banking sector, they've not succeeded. You're just looking at 10% of the country being covered after 2001. That's the reason why banks didn't work was to be able to get the transparency in place. There's a lot of audits, there is checks, there is Afghanistan being in a place where security is one of our biggest concerns. For good reasons, we want to make sure banks are very well controlled to be able to get rid of money laundering and all of that. That's the first thing. Then to be able to get somebody to invest into a place like Afghanistan with physical investment, where you have to open branches, go to rural areas, or even get out of Kabul, it was the first thing. And I will tell you how blockchains can be used to mitigate between these two. The first, the transparency problem could be solved. We know that blockchain is a distributed system. It is very transparent. Every single transaction is recorded, and it cannot be changed by anyone. So that kind of gives you an overall level of control on the transactions. You would know that the transactions are not at least being being changed by anybody as the middle person. However, to be able to actually get as the first point where you're getting the money and changing it into tokens, that is the point where there needs to be a lot of work done to be able to not look at this current wave of the first blockchain product coming out to be a money washing tool, to be precise. But that's one thing that we will have to look at. In terms of investment, blockchains does not require a lot of investment. You build the app, you put it up there, and you can get shopkeepers, you can get normal people, you can get anybody to do the transactions as a banker would do it in the environment that they do. So that is probably the two reasons why banking didn't work. Mobile money, on the other hand, long story. It's been going on for a very long time. The idea of incentive, which is what I like about Send, is the deal breaker here. For having somebody in a remote area to be able to do mobile money transactions, a 1 or 2 or 3% fee at that time does not look very attractive to them, considering the risk that they put in there. However, with blockchain, especially Send, where you have the mechanism where the more people get into the system with the same amount of tokens, the money or the value of token grows, is something that will provide enough incentive for people to start changing fiat to tokens, or tokens back to fiat. So incentives is the main ball game changer between mobile money and blockchains.
Sarah, if you want to jump in with some of the questions that we have been getting from Twitter, especially.
Yeah, quick. I mean, before we do that, I want to follow up on what you were just saying. And we've talked about kind of the challenges and the opportunities to adopting blockchain-based solutions and peer-to-peer kind of decentralized exchange-based solutions. But you started kind of to jump in and talk about cryptocurrencies. What is the general perception of cryptocurrencies in Afghanistan? And do you see that as another hurdle to get people to adopt these technologies, or is it something that people are fairly open to adopting?
Honestly speaking, I've been talking to a lot of people. We just recently held a panel discussion. I'm not sure if you guys saw that. We got a lot of people, and we had the government, the private sector, and the academia in our discussion. It was a very interesting discussion, and we kind of went through the future technologies discussion, and part of that was blockchains. The good thing about Afghanistan is that blockchain is not very well represented, because we don't have, even to a certain extent, I think there's only one bank that can give you an international MasterCard or a Visa card. So given that amount of restriction on the people, I wouldn't say nobody, but a very small number of people have access to different kind of cryptocurrencies and know the space. So it's pretty much a totally blank topic in Afghanistan, which is good. And this, I also remember something to raise maybe for our Afghan people who might have joined in, is the concept of, when the space is so blank, there is nobody who is working on any product. There comes a lot of people who want to just grab the money and go. So there was, I think the only coin that's made it to Afghanistan was OneCoin, which just like a small Google told me, it's a Ponzi scheme. And I think if we were able to introduce the technology to start with in a constructive manner that can actually help the people get access to finance, and we hold the companies or the products responsible, that we would be able to get to a level where people would en masse would be able to trust the blockchain. But this is also important times, because if we don't start working on actual solutions, I'm sure within the next 1 or 2 years, more fake currencies and schemes like that will show up, and that will then start the time when the government and the people will start being against blockchains or cryptocurrencies. So it's a very good place to be in right now if people have great ideas and are constructive to help the people, and also make actual products that can make a difference in here. They will open the way to many other opportunities.
So one question kind of to wrap up would be, what's next? Concretely, specifically, we always, on our end of things and in the industry in general, we're always talking about kind of how to implement, how to achieve massive adoption. But if we kind of boil that down to more specific next steps, in the Afghan context, what are those specific next steps? What's like the most urgent next move to make sure that we're able to kind of keep pushing for the adoption of these new technologies? Okay.
Interesting question. What is next is, I believe, there's two ways to go when new technologies come in. The internet came in at the time when I was really young, and probably from the time I remember, I've been into the internet. The idea of new technologies is always put on to the West or the most developed countries. I think what is next is that we need to challenge that, which is basically what my company Awal is. The main idea behind it was to be able to get these the developing countries to accept the fact that we don't need to use third-tier technologies that are tested 20 times. But we need to get into technologies like blockchain from when it starts for us to not miss the boat. And if we can to do that, I think there needs to be a community built in Afghanistan, which is what I started working on. And we're getting more people involved, software developers to cryptographers to bankers and all of that. We're talking about blockchains. Which is good. And once we build that community, it would basically depend on how that community wants to drive. I think if anybody makes a blockchain-based product, a coin tomorrow in Afghanistan, with some amount of efforts, they would be able to make money and run away with it. If that happens, we will be in deep trouble, at least with blockchains. From what I know, technically, it's a great technology. But if we can, first thing, we need to prevent going there. Secondly, we need to start building a community, and then the community would be able to work with more people, including the government and the banks and all of that, to come up with solutions that are good for everyone. And I'm sure there is at least 1 or 2 ways where we can make blockchain-based products which would be positive to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really admirable the work that you're doing to kind of bridge the gap between government, technology, community building, development. So really, really cool to hear from you. We're so grateful to have had you on this call and to learn what you've been up to and kind of what are the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. We're also really, really happy to have you as a partner as we push forward with Send and WeSend and kind of expanding to new markets. And it seems like, what we're learning every day is that there is a market out there for solutions exactly like this. And we're really happy to be working with you on that. So thanks so much for joining this call. And Pacho, thanks for joining from London over there.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Just one last question that we usually do to our guests is, Nasrat, how do you keep updated with the amount of information. What are the mechanisms that you implement in your life so other people can learn and start to implement them? Because there's so much information coming from everywhere. How to handle and choose the best information for you?
Well, I think, well, I'm a lifelong learner to start with. I learn every day. So it's not a hard thing for me, but tip for anybody who's listening, get very young people involved into technologies, and you would be amazed at how much interaction they would do with you. In the case of blockchains, I'm working with a guy who is 16 years old, and we talk about this every day. The guy comes up with brilliant ideas. He's learning smart contracts now, and with him, I learn too. Using most of my knowledge that I had from the past, I think feeds into this, and that strategy thinking that I have also helps me. But I think, again, it would go back to conversation, especially if you can find somebody curious who has enough time on hand to be able to get into this. I think you will learn a lot.
Thank you very much, Nasrat. Thank you very much, everyone. Remember, the hashtag for this week is ecosystem of the future. Ecosystem of the future. Use the hashtag to ask more questions on Twitter and the other channels. Thank you very much, Sarah. See you next time.
And we hope you have a great rest of the evening. Pacho, enjoy the afternoon over there. And for those of you who weren't able to join us live, we'll keep this posted on our YouTube channel. So hope you can follow along with the recording. And yeah, thank you both. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Hafiz, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bueno, muy bien, Sara. Ciao.
Hey, we're still live. Hang on. Are we? Yeah, we are. I think I'm frozen.